Excellent presentation. Our next speaker is Ken Binmoeller. Ken is a nationally, internationally recognized authority, leader, pioneer within the fields of advanced endoscopy and EUS. He's going to talk with us about his approach to gastric varices.
Thank you very much. I just want to get this HDMI cable hooked up, and I'll have you do that. I just want to say how impressed I am with this course. The magnificent trio, they keep outdoing themselves each year. I've been very blessed to have been invited a few times, and it's just amazing how this course constantly outdoes itself. It just keeps surpassing itself. It really condenses what other courses require several days into one day. I suppose part of that could be limiting us to just 10 minutes. Can I start? Start mirroring? Yes? No? Okay. Are we good? Yes, we're good. Excellent. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my approach. But my approach has evolved over the decades, and it has come with a better understanding, appreciation of the vascular anatomy of gastric varices, which is very different from esophageal varices, and even among the subtypes of gastric varices, different. And that in turn has led me to incorporate EUS into my approach, and additionally also using coils, not just to prevent embolization, but also targeting the feeder vessel. So I want to share a little bit of that with you. And let's start with the beginning, 1989, the Surin classification. So Surin appreciated the heterogeneity of gastric varices. You're all familiar with this classification with the 4 different types based on topography. The AGA has simplified this a little into 3 different types. That's a welcome step. It's in the right direction. So we have the lesser curve, the cardial fundal that combine the GLV2 and the IGV1, and then we have the distal. Now, I believe we can simplify this further into 2 types, fundal and non-fundal. Now, morphologically, it's obvious. We see that these fundal varices, they're large, they're tumorous, and they look like a cluster of grapes. The non-fundal ones, they can be anywhere. They're small, they're tortuous, and they're ropey. So there's already this morphologic difference between them. But really, these are 2 different species of varices because it's a question of what is driving the formation of these varices, and that's where they differ hemodynamically. So firstly, in terms of the inflow, our afferents, the short gastrics supply the fundal varices. They derive from the splenic vein. The non-fundal varices, they derive from the portal vein through the left gastric. So the inflow is completely different, the source of what's driving the formation. Importantly, the efferents, the fundal varices drain by shunts. These are gastrorenal shunts into the IVC. The non-fundal varices, they drain through really physiologic venous pathways into the superior vena cava or the superior mesenteric vein. And then blood flow. This is the critical part. This is the part that I started to appreciate why it is that we can have these catastrophic embolizations, because the blood flow of these fundal varices is very high. This is high capacitance, low resistance flow. Versus non-fundal, this is low blood flow, low capacitance, high resistance, representing the portal hypertension. So the HPVG in these non-fundal varices is very high, representing portal hypertension, whereas the fundal varices, the HPVG is normal, maybe at most a little elevated, because now the body has created a compensatory shunt. So what I want you to remember is that fundal varices are really the body's compensatory natural tips it has created its own tips. So the outflow of fundal varices is via these shunts. Now you see this nicely in this cartoon here, the gastric varices draining through the gastrorenal shunt into the renal vein into the IVC. You see this beautifully on these venograms that our IR colleagues do. You see the gastric varices here draining through the renal vein into the IVC. Now this is part of a shunt pathway that originates with the splenic circulation, which provides up to about maybe 50% or more of the blood flow into the portal venous circulation. So the body is just trying to come up with a compensatory pathway to shunt that into an alternative escape valve, really. And the fundal varices are part of that escape valve. So how can we identify these gastrorenal shunts? It's very easy. Just get a portal venous contrast CT or MRI, and you will immediately see beautifully the gastrorenal shunt. It can be very impressive, and you'll also see the gastric fundal varices. I always obtain one of these before I embark on my treatment. I want to know. And in fact, the AGA in their Clinical Practice Update 2021, best practice advice, I agree with BPA number 4, cross-sectional imaging with portal venous contrast phase should be obtained to determine the presence or absence of gastrorenal shunts. I agree. This is the part I have some issue with. This is BPA number 10. When a gastrorenal shunt is present and local expertise is available, there usually is, BRTO is the optimal endovascular therapy. There is no mention of cyanoacrylate glue or endoscopic treatment, none. So just to remind you what BRTO is, I think you know this balloon is placed in the gastrorenal shunt, inflated to prevent the flow of the sclerosant or the glue into the systemic circulation, and there are variants of this, CARTO with coils, PARTO with plugs, but the goal is to occlude the gastrorenal shunt and have that extend into the gastric varices. The problem is, and just think about this in terms of how the body works, the physiology and the pathophysiology. The BRTO blocks an adaptive natural shunt, and this is going to in turn worsen portal hypertension. That means ascites, hydrothorax, if it's there, it'll get worse. Esophageal varices, it'll get worse. It's been shown in multiple studies that these increase substantially and bleeding risk. And portal hypertensive gastropathy, don't underestimate that as a source of chronic blood loss. The only advantage that I can see to doing BRTO is if a patient has bad encephalopathy, because there clearly there is an advantage to diverting the flow back into the portal circulation into the liver to detoxify the ammonia and et cetera, all the toxins. That would be really the only, maybe if a patient had a very high MELD score. Now, this is the root of why this recommendation came. It's this randomized controlled trials that showed that BRTO was superior to glue injection. And this is for rebleeding of gastric varices and all-cause rebleed. Now, it's endoscopic cyanoacrylate injection. That is yesterday's news, folks. We have evolved to EUS-guided treatment. And this is really the game changer, I think, because we're seeing just the tip of the iceberg with endoscopy. With EUS, we can see the varix lumen and the feeder. It allows controlled delivery, and we can confirm varix obliteration with Doppler. And it has been shown, first in retrospective studies by John DeWitt, showing that EUS-guided glue injection is superior to endoscopy glue injection, all right? But now we also have a randomized controlled trial that confirms that EUS-guided glue injection is superior to endoscopic glue injection. In other words, we should be replacing endoscopic glue injection with EUS-guided. But for me, the key advantage is the coil implantation. This is what I described back in 2011, where the coil fills and reduces flow in the varix, and the wool strands serve as a scaffold to retain the glue at the site of injection. This allows us to effectively treat these feeder vessels. And I'm just going to quickly show you some of the data now validating this concept. So this is a meta-analysis comparing coil and glue versus endoscopic glue alone, showing the superiority in terms of rebleeding and intervention rates. This is another study, a randomized controlled trial now, comparing the combination of coil and glue versus just EUS-guided glue alone. So does adding the coil really add an advantage? And this study in 50 patients clearly showed that it did in terms of reintervention rate, time to reintervention, survival, et cetera. So we have level 1 evidence showing the advantage. And then we have this study showing that a combination of coil and glue is superior to just putting the coil. So the glue does add something to just the coils. And there are some that just use coils, but you really have to pack them in. So I'm going to summarize with my approach to gastric varices, and it has evolved. And it starts with this. And I insist on getting this, and I review it before I put the scope in the patient. Now, often they come to me already with a diagnosis of fundal varices, but I still always insist on this, a portal venous contrast CT. If a HRS is positive, hepatorenal shunt, and the patient has encephalopathy, that's where I'll call the interventional radiologist and discuss maybe doing Berto, maybe. But if there's no encephalopathy, I do EUS-guided coil and glue. Now, if there's no shunt, I will do an EUS looking for the feeder. I always believe we can get the feeder, that saves time, reduces risk of embolization. But sometimes you can't find the feeder, and if you've got lots of ropey serpiginous varices in the stomach, that's just not practical to go under EUS targeting each of these, and then I'll just do that with endoscopic glue injection. Thank you very much.